Okay, I'm going to change gears a little bit and go to other options, because here's the energy mix today. You can see that oil and natural gas add up to a lot of it, and here's how we're using it for various things, and here's how we're projected to be using it out into 2030. So the industrial use is the biggest part of that story, and that's going to govern perhaps how much of the pie gets sliced up where. And this is going to look different by nation. This is US. So our nuclear contribution is much, much smaller than many countries, particularly European countries.
Can I ask you a question there?
Yeah.
So that says that transportation is about, say, 20% of the consumption worldwide. And so that's enough. So if the gas price gets to hit the bucket, curb the use of your automobile, that would have an impact on the price. But how much of a gap is there in the supply and demand to make that a feasible driver?
I don't know the answer to that, but you mentioned automobiles, but we also think about trucks and trains.
Sure,
and those are a little bit, well, not necessarily out of our control, because the trains could switch to electric. The trucks probably cannot. So I don't know how biased that is by thinking automobile, but I don't know the answer to. So what are these alternatives? Biofuels, yes, you can make diesel oil from algae, for example. Last year or 2 years ago, the hot topic was ethanol. And then suddenly people woke up to the fact that people eat corn. And that if you make ethanol from your corn, you're going to be depriving poor people of their food. And that was interesting to see how quickly that went from the answer to our energy crisis to politically unwise, and we shouldn't even talk about it anymore. Here are various biocontributors, though, and you see corn is pretty inefficient anyway. And algae, down here, that's the answer. But algae, actually doing it and scaling it up to a commercial product, this is clearly made in a laboratory, and it looks like diesel oil, but whether you can do that on a big scale, there are a couple of companies trying, but I haven't seen any big demonstration yet of sort of refinery scale operation. Coal, this country has lots of coal reserves, so do places like Poland and some other Eastern Europe areas. Other parts of the world, I believe India has lots of coal. So the problem with coal is making it clean. You hear all these ads about clean coal, and an equally loud lobby saying there's no such thing as clean coal. And that answer has yet to be written, but because I'm from ConocoPhillips, I have to brag about our clean coal. We have a process here that actually creates what we call synthetic natural gas from the coal. And it's entirely contained. So the only dirty part is actually mining the coal. And beyond that, then we send natural gas to market. Geothermal is really great. The Earth is hot inside. In some places that's near the surface. The problem is the places it's near the surface, seen here, are typically not in major metropolitan areas where the energy is needed. You're going to hear that again as I talk about other energy sources. The market is commonly not where the resource is. But you can, in fact, put pipes down into hot rock and bring the water back up. And it's done in California, and it's done quite well there. Hydrogen, that's the answer. A lot of people say, we're just going to convert all our vehicles to fuel cells that run on hydrogen. All we need to do is separate the hydrogen out of water. It's very abundant. Well, separating hydrogen from oxygen in water takes a lot of energy. You may wind up getting more, putting more energy in than you get out. And that's a balance that somebody needs to calculate before you go invest in hydrogen. But there are BMWs that run on it, and there are filling stations. I'm not sure where that one is, but I've seen it in Iceland, for example, where they also have a real intelligent way of dealing with geothermal. Solar is great, but sunshine is only part of the day, and it doesn't shine at all in some places, as you probably believe in Boston. Here's solar intensity, and again, it's not where the population centers are. So you can build some great solar collectors and generate electricity, but then you've got to have this huge investment in wires. The infrastructure has to be there. And what's happening with solar is very interesting, because while all the politicians and mega thinkers are dealing with it, it's actually being incorporated in a smaller way And not necessarily just in homes with rooftop thingies, but if you go out and you look and you're driving through a suburb and you see a school crossing sign, what's powering it? It may be a little solar cell. If you go into a national park and you see some stop at the ranger cabin sign, it's likely got a solar panel on it. So that's become sort of a backdoor technology that is growing very fast. And that may eclipse all these mega thinking giant arrays that are going to generate electricity. Yes?
You made a comment earlier, though, about some companies or just oil pipelines in general. I mean, I would imagine the same thing is true. The oil is refined or extracted in very remote places like the North Sea, and piped and transported across the world. It would be a similar application, or maybe piggyback on top of that infrastructure.
You might. The issue there was that the profitability of oil is so high that we can afford to build a pipeline. This is still expensive compared to other energy sources, so the investment, people may not be willing to make that investment up front. And wind is great, but in the Globe yesterday, there was a big article about the main proponent in this country of wind power, Boone Pickens, is canceling his project. And it was exactly that issue. The wind is blowing out in West Texas, and the people are not there who need the energy. So the big investment in electric lines didn't happen, and he didn't get the funding for that part. So he's got 400 plus wind turbines for sale, and no place to put them. So we keep coming up with which one of these is the answer. No, all of them are the answer. And we ultimately will be using all of these, I'm convinced. Wave energy. Boy, right off the coast here, you can have a lot of these buoys that are moving every day, generating electricity. And I keep coming back to electricity because that is the ultimate currency of the future in the energy world. It's got to be electric because electric power is somehow portable, it is somehow storable. When the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining, you can store and bank the electricity. Now there are other ways of banking that energy. A lot of the world pumps water uphill during the day and drains it back downhill at night. So you can generate 2 turbines.
But isn't energy storage actually really the real problem? Because compared to oil, which stores beautifully, right, in very compact spaces, you have tons of kilowatt hours, batteries just...
Yeah, we're not very good at batteries. That's the key to all of this electric issue. Yeah. And there are some new things on the future, but they're not here yet. And then we come to this one that in this country we don't like to talk about. Much of the world is powered by nuclear energy. In this country we had an event right there called 3 Mile Island. And over in Europe, right there, called Chernobyl. And you can see what happened to the construction of nuclear facilities. Everything flattened out at that point. And yet ultimately this has to be the answer. And even organizations like the Sierra Club, an environmental organization, they're saying ultimately this is probably the answer. But there's so many unanswered aspects to nuclear, like what do you do with the spent fuel? And where do you store it? And how do you make it safe? How do you prevent terrorists from stealing the fuel? Things like that. That it's probably a long way out, but right now there are 34 nuclear plants having permits applied for them in the U.S.
For the
Yes.
old plants.